Hey, I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTrackGear.com. Today we're gonna do a FlashTune FTECU Flash on our 2022 STG Yamaha R7 project bike. With this, everything we're doing here is intended for closed course operation only, right? This is for track bikes, for race bikes, or I guess for whatever you decide as a human to do with it. This is a pretty technical thing. There's a lot of ways to go here, right? There's tuners that you can take your bike to and they can install this for you and then ultimately, dyno and map the bike for you. I've got a local guy that I use here, Dwayne Hoffer at Hoffer Performance here in Michigan, does a great job. Got my homeboy Anthony Corbo at Bouse Racing. He's like famous all across the country. Anthony's a hell of a tuner too, right? If you want to mail stuff in and do things, he is another excellent resource, right? If this is a project that you want to tackle yourself, you can watch the steps in this video and you're going to find as you go a little deeper here, this install is a little more complicated than we initially expected. But go ahead and watch the video and decide whether or not this is a project you want to tackle. Okay, so FlashTune bike side harness install. This is very convenient, right? This is what we've been using on the Ninjas, used it on the Suzuki. It's a great tool. Allows you to tune the bike. You want to take the bike to a dyno. Any of the tuners out there are going to be able to work with the FlashTune stuff. Super common. You can see I already have the bodywork off the bike. We did that for the other video that we were shooting. Anytime you're doing something like this with the ECU, you know what, it's a great idea to at least disconnect the battery. In our case, I just pulled the battery out real quick. I threw it on the charger because this bike has done a whole hell of a lot of sitting. So we've got that part done. Now let's go ahead and we've got plenty of access here. Let's pull the ECU like so. Push in the center release. Pull back on the lever. It's going to release the connector. You want to make sure you put the ECU to the side. We need to remove this cover. And what you're going to do here is I'm putting a little pressure forward on it. And then there's a release tang right here. Felt that release a little bit. There's one on either side. And then it slides right off. Those tangs are right here. All right, so just pull out, push forward, and you can release that. Next up is going to be, and all these steps are outlined in the FTECU instructions, going to be releasing the pins. And what I'm doing is using this small flat-bladed screwdriver to very gently lift up on this white pin lock. All you have to do is just get it to the point where it clicks. That is going to release it. Now what we need to do is we need to identify the pin locations that we're going to be working with. The diagram on the instructions is really pretty clear. It's counting over from the back. And you can, of course, translate that to the front. You need to be able to get in here and remove the little pins. So what we want to do is I've already counted over. I know it's pin 6. Going to turn this over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's number 6. Kind of gently push. See it come through the back here. Pair of needle nose. And we'll do this for each of the 3 right there. So 6 is the first one. The second one is going to be number 13. came out pretty easy. And then the last one is going to be pin number 22. It's going to be in this middle row. Let's go ahead and kind of spread the wires apart a little bit. Some of this is difficult to show. I'm in the way, hands are in the way, and so that camera angle here may not be the best. Okay, slid it into number 22. That one actually just kind of slipped out. It's in the abyss. Okay, now we're ready to slide in our pins. And orientation here is very, very important. You want to slide these in the proper direction, and of course you have to get the right one in the right position. So yellow is going to occupy position 6, and you want to orient these like so. This needs to be facing the same direction, so this notch needs to be facing the same direction as the clip that locks the harness down. So let's go ahead and find position 6. These, of course, are going to come in from the back side. Find position 6, make sure it's oriented correctly, and then you put in a little bit of pressure. Until you hear it clip in place. And you can also come to the front and see that it's been in far enough, just a very light tug, you know that you're good to go. The red is going to go in position 13. Orientation will be identical to the other pin. And the slots are easy to find because you've removed, of course, the plug that was there previously occupying it. Make sure that relief is facing upward. And I don't know if you guys could hear that click or not. I was able to hear. There's a very light audible click, and you can feel once it clips and locks into position. That will be further secured, of course, once we put in the lock itself. Now position 22 is going to be the orange. Spread these apart a little bit so that you have good access. Orientation of the pin is going to be the same. Going to double check each one of them. All right, they are all in there, good to go. Now we're going to turn the connector over. Let's grab that little screwdriver that we used to release the lock. You're going to know you're good to go, right, when you feel each one of them lock into position, and then the lock for the pins is able to push down without any real pressure on it. Now what we do need to do too is we need to make sure that we secure each of these, because you're going to use this harness a little bit. You're going to put a little pressure on it sometimes, so you want to make sure you use, and they do supply a couple of cable ties. See what I did there? Kind of folded that wire up just a little bit so they're all even down here now. And then I'm going to take a cable tie and I'm going to secure this right here. This is just going to help to ensure that we don't have any problems in the future. Let's get some side cutters and cut the tail off of that, then we can put that cover back on. Cover just slides over like so. If you have any concerns for chafing, you know, in this area, you could go one step further. I think I might just do that. Use a little bit of electrical tape back here to make sure those are all covered. When we come back, we're going to attach the ground wire and do a little reassembly before we do our initial flash. Okay, so let's get ready to do our first flash. The ground wire, I want to show you what I did with it. I just sandwiched it underneath the negative battery cable. There's no better ground than that location right there. There's other places you can put it, for sure. You know, they show in the diagram, you can go somewhere here on the frame rail, but they want you to clean some powder coating off. In my opinion, that's a great place to do it. You do what you think is appropriate. Something we're going to need to know here. Probably should have had you do this earlier, but we'll do it now. You need the ECU number. Okay, so go ahead and make sure you note that. It's going to be that number right there. You're going to need that in order to do your flash. You need to register your cable. Lucas is going to put an image up on the screen right now that kind of shows the prompt to get the cable registered. Each one of these cables is unique. It's registered to your account that you create on their tuning suite, okay? I'm going to recommend to everybody right now, go to ftecu.com/quick start. That is going to be the area that is going to really be the resource to help walk you through all of this. If you have any problems beyond that, right, you can reach out to their tech support, and I can tell you they are fantastic. So let's start by, I already have downloaded this software to my laptop. Got a wireless connection. We're going to go ahead and open their FTECU tuning suite. File manager is already open. For the first time with the cable, you would plug it into the USB port. It's going to register this to your account because I'm already logged in here. I actually did that step yesterday, so we don't need to do that again. I'm going to go now. You remove the cap from the end of your tuning cable, plug that in. You can hear the device is connected. Come over here to File, Manager. This will pop up here in a second. There it is, and let's take a quick look in here. Here are the stock ECU images, right? And let's go in here and double check and make sure the stock one is in there for the R7. Look, there it is. There is my ECU number, -30 right there. There is my stock ECU file. They make that really easy to understand that that's the stock one. We don't want that because that's not the fun one. We're going to be using this obviously on the racetrack only at this point. All this stuff is for off-road use only. Here is our unrestricted file for our ECU. You can see the -30. Double click that. It's going to load it up over here on the left side. When it's done, it'll pop up. There you go. I'm going to be super straight with you. I leave all this stuff to the professionals. In our case, who is the professional? Our professional is Dwayne Hoffer at Hoffer Performance. We take our bikes there. He does all the mapping. This is just going to be the initial flash that we'll use for the first time that we ride the bike over at Barber Motorsports Park next weekend with our friends from Sportbike Track Time. Injector decel cut. There's a couple of things you can enable or disable. We're going to leave all of that alone. So we're hooked up. Come up over here to Device. There is the file that we have. There is the cable, right? The license, the serial number. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It's preparing the ECU image. Once that's complete, we're going to be prompted to power up. Right there. I'm going to come over here. Very important, make sure your battery is fully charged. You do not want to lose power in the middle of this. That would not be a good situation. Click on, requesting ECU ID. No registered ECU found. This is also important. It's the first flash. Would you like to assign the license number to this ECU? 100%. We're going to do that. You can see the prompt change here. Preparing write data. Leave the USB connected and disconnect here. OK. Power off or key off. OK. Connect 6 pin. Gotcha. Power on or key on. Recognize that. Okay, that's interesting. Write attempt failed. Please retry. Okay, you know, sometimes you get yourself involved in a project and it just doesn't go the way you expected it to go. Shit happens. Stay calm, stay patient, keep working, and odds are you're going to find your way to the right result. That's what happened yesterday with this ECU flash. I've flashed multiple bikes over the years, different project bikes, where I've installed the harness, done the flash. I've had difficulty twice. This one ended up being the most challenging. A little bit of patience, a lot of assistance from Mike over at FlashTune in the tech support department. We were able to get this solved. I'm able to flash this thing now, no problemo. So initially, the most common issue is when you're unable and you get a no response error like we got, right? It's going to end up being misinstallation of the harness. I was a mechanic at a Cadillac dealer for a long period of time before I started this. I've rebuilt a lot of connectors. I'm pretty good with that stuff. It doesn't mean I couldn't make a mistake. So I did go in there and I double and triple checked, made sure the pin locations were right, that they were all fully seated, so on and so forth. The installation of the hardware was very good. There is a test that's available and outlined on the FTECU site that you use to verify the installation of a bike side harness to make sure that the communication wires that are and the ground are all working perfectly. So what you do is you remove your cap here. Your ignition is going to be in the off position. You're going to jumper together. The first two are going to be red and orange. You do that with the ignition off. You turn the ignition on. If the fuel pump does not cycle, okay, that means those are good, and you move on to step 2. Step 2, you turn the ignition off. You then jumper the red and the yellow wire together. Turn the ignition off. If the fuel pump does not cycle, indicates it's like in programming mode or something. You're communicating, your install is now good. You can then move on to the very end of it where you're checking 5 volts reference, and this is going to verify your ground right here. You use the black and you use a voltmeter. You're going to go black to yellow, and then you're going to go black to orange to verify that you're getting a 5 volt reference on each one of those, which I did, right? So yesterday, when I did that hardware test, I got mixed results, right? One time. And then after that, every time the fuel pump would cycle, which would normally indicate that I misinstalled something. Fair enough. So I went through everything, found nothing, spent a bunch of time on it, pulled all the pins out, made sure that they were properly crimped, so on and so forth. It's going to kind of a long tail we're weaving here. Put everything back together, got back on the phone with tech support after I spent some time with this test. And during all of that, I had the ECU unplugged and the ignition off. A hard reset is going to be when the ECU is completely separated from the system and there's no power going to it at all. It's a full reset. When I did that and then performed the hardware test, every time I performed the hardware test, the fuel pump would not cycle, which indicated the hardware or the install was good. Through further testing, what I discovered was that if I removed the jumper while the ignition was on and the fuel pump cycled, the fuel pump would continue to cycle every time, which would basically be an indicator, it was false in this case, but it would be an indicator that the hardware was in fact the issue. If I disconnected the ECU for a hard reset, plugged it back in, and then performed that same test, the fuel pump would not cycle at all. I had to manually intervene, right, and do something that was not included in the steps to get the fuel pump to cycle, and then it would continue to cycle. So with that new information, Mike and I were on the phone, we were talking, and he came up with a different strategy. Okay, so if you remember through the prompts when we show you in that very first flash attempt, where it's asking you to cycle the ignition, right? Instead of cycling the ignition, we left the ignition on. We never disconnected the 6-pin connector, okay, from the USB. That was all left. But we unplugged the ECU and plugged it back in. We did that one time, and the ECU flashed, no problemo. So now we're going to just real quickly run you through one flash. And we can even go all the way from the beginning here. This is what it's going to look like after you've gotten your initial flash done. The initial flash, if you're going to have trouble, it's going to be that initial time. It's that first write can sometimes be challenging. So I think this video is proof. We're going to show you the good, the bad, the ugly, and then ultimately the success that is found through just being patient and continuing on with the process. So let's go ahead and get our tuning software open. We're going to go ahead and put in their unrestricted file. Let's go ahead and connect our USB device. Hook that up now. So come over to, I selected the map, the file, the image that I want to put in, okay? Go to device. You can see right here, here is the license that's associated with my account. Here is the name of the file that we're in fact going to put into the ECU. I'm going to click on Write ECU. It's going to upload the ECU image, preparing it. Need to turn on the ignition. Click OK. You can see the status message will change here. And look at that. After all that, right, yesterday, and it was slightly frustrating, took a little bit longer than I expected, but the point was we were able to get the job done. Well, project is done. If you have any questions, leave those in the comments section of this video. I'm always here to help make sure you get the same result we did from our project. This typically goes very, very smoothly. The point of including everything that we did include in this video was to show you guys that sometimes there are complications. When there's complications, stay calm, stay cool, call technical support, be ready to provide them with information, perform a couple of tests, and I can tell you these people over here, they know what they're doing at FlashTune. They're going to be a tremendous resource and help you get your issue sorted out.